Guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for tuning in on today's video. We got a really exciting DIY project that we're putting together. As you saw in the beginning of this video, we actually already got one side done, and then what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you guys the measurements that we took to figure out how to cut these bars and get them to length, and then we're going to go through the welding process. Now, this kit is specifically for 05 and up axles, front Dana 60s. This replaces your front radius arms, which just look hideous up front, and we're going to be replacing those and going to DOM tubing. They call it a 3-link, so we're going to have 1 point on the frame. It's going to mount right to our radius arm mount on the frame, and then it's going to come forward and go to our 2 mounts that are on the axle. Not to mention, Far From Stock also includes these, so they are fully adjustable so that you can recenter your axle, and you can get your caster setting readjusted after you've lifted, lowered your truck. Now, this particular kit from Far From Stock, you can go up to 6 inches of lift. They give you enough bar for up to that. So if you lower the truck a little bit, you can still run this 3-link. There's plenty of bar there to get up to 6 inch as well as drop it down. Now, on my particular truck, we have the Carly 2.5-inch leveling springs, the Bilstein 5100s. We do have an adjustable track bar underneath the truck. If you guys have been on the channel, you guys would have seen we did all of this. So we've got the adjustable track bar, all new front end components. And what Carly does to fix your caster setting is they give you a caster bushing that goes in the upper ball joint. So right there, which brings the caster back into spec. And what we're going to be replacing is this guy right here. So this big arm right here that goes down, we got 2 bolts up front, 1 bolt in the back. We're going to be replacing that and going to the adjustable 3-link setup from Far From Stock. Now, this is the basic idea behind the bars. Like I said, we already have the one side all welded up and ready to go. So this mount back here is going to go to our frame, the mount on our frame for our radius arm. And then you weld this onto that pipe. And this bar will go to the top mount, and then this bar will go to our bottom mount. You can flip this around if you wanted to. I think for strength and durability purposes, I want the longer bar on the bottom. Guys that are looking for a little bit more clearance, you might want to flip these around and run the shorter bar on the bottom. That way you get a little bit more ground clearance as far as that goes. Now, you guys already know we are going to be getting these bars powder coated white for the truck, and it's going to match our rear traction bars. It's going to look killer. I'm super excited about it. And so the great thing about this is yes, it adds that look that everybody likes, you know, the big tubing underneath the truck. It's going to look killer, powder coated. But in addition to that, we are going to get that adjustability that we need because we lifted the truck up a little bit. And so it's going to allow us to adjust our caster and adjust the center of where the axle should be sitting. Let me go back over to the truck. I want to show you guys what happens when you lift these trucks up and why it is so important for ride quality, strength, and overall performance of your suspension. So when you lift the truck, right, your frame goes up or the axle goes down, however you want to look at it, right? You have 2 points at the axle and you have 1 point at the back of the frame here. So this bar, when your frame goes up and you have your 2 solid points up front, that's going to rotate the axle like this, okay? So if you look at our spring, you can see the spring is not straight up and down. And that is because it has been rolled forward like this. So you can see that the spring is not straight up and down. And so we are losing a little bit of performance in the spring because it is not straight up and down. Now, the higher you go, the worse this is going to get, which is why a lot of companies give you a drop bracket for the back side of that radius arm. The other thing that's going to happen is because this is 1 length radius arm, your axle is actually going to be pulled back. So as it's rotated forward, it's also going to be pulled back a little bit because of the way this works. So as the angle goes down, right, it's going to pull that axle back. And so that's what we're after. That's what we're trying to correct. And like I said, this is only going to get worse the higher you go. So the further up the truck goes, the more extreme these angles become, and the more important it is to get something that's adjustable so that you can set up your caster and recenter the axle in the wheel well. Now, we already have all of our bars cut. Obviously, that set over there is welded and ready to go. So we cut the other 2 bars for the other side to the exact same length as those over there. And we are basically just going to be creating a match set to our first one over there. We only did the measurements once. Now, because we only did a 2.5-inch leveling kit, we don't need a lot of adjustability in our particular setup because we only went up 2.5 inches. So it's going to be pretty close to factory, but we do want to correct that caster a little bit and, of course, get our spring so that it is straight up and down. So for our basic measurements, we measured from this back hole to the lower front one right there, center to center. We measured that. So the next thing we did after we had our center to center measurement is I took our joint here, because this is going to be one of the holes. This is going to be one of the centers. And I screwed the nut up all the way, and to have the maximum adjustability both ways, in and out, shorten or lengthen, I took the measurement of this and cut it in half, okay? And what I did was I screwed that amount into our joint up here. So halfway in, okay? And then from there, we need to determine where this would go. So we put that over our pipe, and we got our center to center measurement. And that would give us the most adjustability to lengthen or shorten this bar, this particular bar, which is the lower one. Then we were able to determine how far this tube is going to protrude into our axle mount. And so what I did is I wanted this plate to match up top here. I'm not sure if it's designed to go on the flat down there, but I wanted this to match up top, just like that. And so once we were able to get this piece into position, you can see we got it clamped down up here, and then we got a level on top, and we've got a plate in the back so that we can get it level and make sure the bar is straight up and down going into our mount. But once you're able to determine how far you want the bar to protrude, and you have your center to center measurement accurate, you can mark the pipe and go ahead and cut it. Now, I'm not going to be doing a welding tutorial. If you guys are experienced welders or have basic knowledge of welding, you know, you got to understand this stuff's got to be clean and ready to go to weld. We are using a Hobart handler, 180, 220 volt. So I'm not going to go over like wire speed and amperage or anything like that. The basic understanding is that if you know what you're doing with a welder, this job is doable, but I am not going to be going over the serious welding, the process of welding. So now once you get to this point, like I said, we're going to want to make sure that this is level. And then the next thing I did is we want to make sure it's straight side to side going in to our bracket up front as well. So we put a piece of bar stock on the side here, and we can take a measurement from the pipe, from the edge of this pipe to our bar, and then we can measure it back here and then go forward and measure it up here. And once you have a point of reference, you can determine whether this bar needs to be moved right or left in order to ensure that it is going into our bracket completely 100% straight and good to go. At that point, you can go ahead and tack it up, and then we remeasure everything, make sure it's good to go, and then we can finish weld this thing and get moving. I'll tell you how we got the measurements for the second bar, how I set it up. That's what makes this kit really, really cool. It's complete 100% DIY. You can change it. You can do whatever you want with it, which is one of the reasons I was so stoked to get my hands on this setup and give it a shot myself. basically, I already welded the joint into our small tube here. You can see that. We welded that into place. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go off of our bar here. We have to determine, this is our last piece we have to weld on. So we have to weld this piece on to our big bar, and then we have to weld this piece on to our small bar. So we're going to be moving on to this one next, and basically the measurement that we're going to take for this is we're going to just basically mimic exactly what we did here. So it's about 6 inches back from where this pipe starts. So about 6 inches back, and we put that on there. And then I'll show you guys how we got this to where it is, the opening here is dead center of the opening here. So I'll show you guys how we did that and how we determined the length for our top bar. Now, when we went to measure for this bar, basically what we did is we went underneath the truck with this one here. So we had this welded together, and we stuck this bar underneath the truck, and we matched the back bolt hole and our bottom front bolt hole. We matched that up with our two center to centers here. And then basically all we did was we took our measuring tape, and I wanted the top bar to be as straight as possible. You guys can see over here how I measured everything out, and I marked it all down. You can see the bar is going to protrude, and we're going to have 5 inches and 3/8. That's how far from the end of our chassis link to our bar, how far that's going to protrude into there. So we measured all of this stuff. We have a center to center here for that bar, and then we have center to center here. I marked down what our actual bar length is going to be, because your bar length and your center to center are going to be different. And so you can just see that basically I drew this out. I wanted to mark down that way. Once the first set was built, then we could basically just use it as a mock-up for the second one and take our measurements and be good to go. So for our particular setup, this was about 6 inches further back from here, okay? And we have it just kind of positioned out on the workbench. And so what we need to do is determine this side to side to make sure that we are perfectly in line with the front mount. So what we did was we set that on top of there. This is an angle finder. And so we're at 0 degrees there. Now we can take it and move it to the top of our mount here. You can see it says 1 degree. So we need to just move it a little bit. So yeah, we're going to get this down to 0 degrees, but then we will double check our measurements. Like I said, always measure everything 100 million times before you go to full weld. And then we'll tack this sucker into place, and then yeah, we'll be well on our way. Like I said, the last thing we got to do is weld our piece here on, and then we'll be ready for powder coat. Well, guys, there we go. We got all 4 of our bars welded up and ready to go. We got to let these suckers cool down, and then we're going to be taking them straight to powder coat, get them powder coated white, And then in part 2 of this series, we're going to be installing them on the truck. Hopefully this video helps you guys out. I will leave a link down in the description where you can click on that link and head over to Far From Stock and pick up a set of these. You can also get them pre-made. You have to send them some of the measurements and tell them what size lift kit you have, and they will pre-make these and powder coat them and ship them to you ready for install. So that is another really cool option if you think that this DIY setup is a little bit out of your league. So thank you guys for tuning in on today's video. Stay tuned for next week when we go ahead and get these installed with the fresh powder coat on them. Like, subscribe, drop a comment. We'll catch you in the next video. Peace.